Staff recommends approval.
Anyone wish to speak for or against the issuing of this license? Hearing none, I'll close public hearing C. Move on to public hearing D. To consider ordinance amendments to the Town of Orono Ordinances, Chapter 18, Land Use, to implement standards for parcels located in the C2 district with frontage along Park Street, Route 2.
All right, my name is Kyle Drexler. I'm the town planner. So the background for this, just to give a brief recap, it's been going on for a while. There's been a moratorium in place, I believe, since September of 2017, and that for development on Park Street, and that really came out of desire to do some more research and look into some possibilities due to the influx of student housing that on that corridor that created the potential for further development and was increasing traffic pressure on Park Street. And, you know, combining that with the comprehensive plan calling for a transportation management plan for the Park Street corridor, which was completed in 2018. One of the recommendations to come out of that plan was to make changes to the land use ordinance to promote things like, you know, safety on the corridor for pedestrians and, you know, other modes of transportation besides simply vehicles, to find ways to reduce traffic pressures and, you know, to just promote more accessibility on the corridor. So this proposed amendment really aims to address some of the recommendations made in that plan and to kind of further the recommendations made in the comprehensive plan by really making Park Street more of a connector between the student housing developments on one side and the university on the other side, instead of being a divider, you know, kind of a burden for people to have to kind of traverse across. And also just setting the foundation for kind of more friendly human scale development and creating a more pleasant kind of experience for people through all modes of transportation on Park Street. So just kind of to go through the proposed amendment, you know, and hit a couple of the main points. The biggest change would probably be to the setback requirement on Park Street. And this is parcels with frontage along Park Street. Anything towards the back would not be impacted. And this is also for multifamily developments and non-residential. So any, you know, single family residential or two family residential buildings would not be impacted. And it's changing the minimum. Right now, there's a setback requirement of a 20-foot minimum, and it would change that to a 10-foot minimum to 25-foot maximum. And the goal of this is to really create, to bring buildings closer to the road, to push parking more towards the sides and the rears of buildings instead of the front, to make businesses or, you know, whatever development is there more accessible for people, safer for people walking along Park Street. And just aesthetically a more pleasing corridor. Development does have an opportunity to kind of increase the setback through a mode of, through a sort of incentive-based approach where they can build higher and then have a further setback. This has been explained more graphically at other meetings. It's a little hard to do without visual representation. But that was one of the things implemented into the ordinance, was a kind of graphic display of this per the recommendation of the planning board to kind of better illustrate to people what this means. So for every, you know, 1 foot of building height you add, you can have a further 2.5 foot increase in setback distance. And the whole idea is to maintain this, you know, ratio where you feel like you have your buildings closer to the road. Aside from that, there are a couple kind of housekeeping, clarifying, you know, things that are proposed in there that affect town-wide level, not just on Park Street. These things are things such as limiting the width of driveways and increasing the distance between driveways to better align with Maine DOT standards, as well as updating the minimum site distance standard, again, to better align with MDOT, and just clarifying a few definitions, kind of updating them to be more comprehensive. It includes a new definition of a service road, which is recommended in the Park Street Transportation Plan. So yeah, I think those are the main points. If anyone has any further questions, I can go into more detail on those.
Kyle, I just want to clarify that the housekeeping change to the driveways, both in terms of the width allowed and the distance and between them and the site distance requirements, would impact only unpermitted current driveways or new driveways. If somebody came in and got a permit for their driveway, which everybody is supposed to have, then we're not going to be coming around telling people they can't use their driveway anymore.
Right. This has no impact on just existing driveways and curb cuts. No one's going to be coming around finding people and requiring them to make any changes to any existing infrastructure.
Thank you, Kyle. And council will have a chance to discuss this at the next meeting. This is just for public input at this point. Is my understanding?
Correct.
So is there anyone that wishes to speak regarding this?
I'm simply wondering if amidst the land use and development plans are being made, if consideration for bike lanes is being taken?
Okay, Kyle Drexler, town planner again. So yeah, a lot of the standards being proposed here, like I said, they kind of set the foundation for things like bike lanes and better pedestrian and alternative modes of transportation. They kind of set the foundation for that infrastructure to be put in place later down the line. It's sort of which has to come first sort of thing. You could put the bike lanes and all those amenities in first, but if it's not an area that people want to come to, then it might not be as widely used as it should. If you create a kind of dynamic on a corridor where buildings are closer and people feel more comfortable being in that space, and then you follow that up with, over time, putting in things like bike lanes, making things more ADA compliant, having better crosswalks, and you can add those things over time, and the kind of development, the infrastructure that's already there will have already been set by what's being proposed here. So it's all tied together. This isn't directly saying that bike lanes are going to be put in place, but it certainly helps that going forward.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll close public hearing D and move on to acknowledgements by council members. Cheryl, we'll start down with you.
I have no acknowledgement at this time.
Other than it's cold.
Other than it's
You can always comment on the weather,
Megan?
especially after Tom resets, unfortunately. There'll be a vacuum in that. Everyone does. It's Maine. I would like to acknowledge Orono native and graduate of the Orono school system, Nicole Maines, who was named one of the 50 badass women in InStyle magazine this month. Nicole is currently featured on the CW's Supergirl, and I think we could all be proud of Nicole. So congratulations, Nicole. You're a badass.
Tom.
I don't know how to follow that exactly, but I do appreciate all the work all the town employees dealing with what seems to be continuous either rain or snow, and and then let's freeze it up into an ice skating ring. And they've done a great job of keeping those roads passable. But it is a long term. I know you guys are in shifts and so forth, but thank you, because I know that's a lot of long hours contiguous. Thank you.
Tom.
I'd like to recognize the recent passing of two longtime Orono residents. Carl Gridley, who passed away since our last meeting, was a longtime science teacher at Orono Middle School. Had a very positive effect on a whole generation of students. There's some wonderful comments on internet, Facebook, about the influence he had. And I'd also like to acknowledge the passing of Don Coates. Don was a longtime Orono resident, actually one of our oldest citizens, I believe, and was the first modern era superintendent of schools in Orono and Beasley back in the 70s. Wonderful gentleman and sadly missed.
Thank you. Lori?
I'd like to acknowledge the great work that the town manager and the economic development staff in our town did to work with a citizen, Elizabeth Johns, who was very interested in helping implement the part of our town comprehensive plan that said there was a long-term goal to provide an indoor space for the Orono farmers market. And this month, on this past Saturday, was the first time that the Orono farmers market had a nice cozy indoor place. And that's also thanks to our schools, because they were in Asa Adams gymnasium. So that was because of the work facilitated by the town to encourage the Orono farmers market people to think of us as a place to be home and indoors. It was a great turnout and a good first event. So I want to thank everyone involved, especially the town and Elizabeth Johns, for encouraging the town to move forward.
Dan?
Thank you. I'd like to, excuse me, echo that as well. The farmers market was fantastic this past weekend. Also echo Tom's comments about Carl Gridley and Don Coates. They were both very active members. I've been here about 12, 13 years now, but they're both very active in my church, the COF, across the street on Main Street. And just two of the nicest people. They had huge impact on both myself and my daughter. Carl Gridley, for the record, had probably the greatest voice in all of Maine. And whenever you'd ask him, he'd simply roll out this, "How are you?" And he'd say, "I'm first rate, Sam, first rate," every time. So I always think of them there. They'll sorely be missed. And also, it's been pretty busy and it's been cold, so I haven't taken in nearly as much theater as I like to. But this past weekend, yesterday actually, I was able to catch a ticket to True North Theater's Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, which is playing for one more weekend at the Cyrus Pavilion. And it's fantastic. It is one of the best productions I've seen in many years, and I highly recommend that. That, along with what some theater company does, True North Theater, what our high schools and middle schools do. Two of our master thespians are right here. Hi, guys. Wave. Yeah, we're talking about you guys. Awkward moment. It's great. The town is really full of arts, the performing arts, and it really supports that. And that's one of the things I love about this town. So thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. We'll move on to unfinished business. We don't have any. Now we'll move the consent agenda. I'll take a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
All right. I will take a vote. All those in favor of the consent agenda? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to new business. Order 1913, order authorizing the town manager to enter into an agreement with the Penobscot County for Regional Animal Control Services for 1 year, beginning January 1, 2019 to December 31, 2019. We'll take a motion, please.
Move approval.
Second.
Josh?
Hi, good evening. Josh Ewing, Police Chief. Just as a little bit of backup for this, the way the animal control system works for us, if someone calls in and says they have a cat that's injured or a dog that's loose, they've lost their dog, or someone has some other sort of domestic incident, which we actually have horses every once in a while to get loose. If they call regional dispatch, dispatch will usually contact the police department, and we'll go out and see if we can manage it on our own. I think last year we had probably a little over 100 calls that our officers managed on their own, whether it was picking up a dog and bringing it back to the station and putting it out on Facebook, and someone recognizes it and gets it back to its owner, or taking cats and dogs up to the orphanage. But there's probably 50 or so last year that the animal control officer managed for us. So there are times when our officers don't have time, they're tied up with other calls, and they don't have the opportunity to go pick up a cat. So we'll call out the animal control officer, and she comes out and does a fantastic job of she'll trap feral cats. She's done that before. She's picked up dogs that were had bitten their owner for some reason. That was a dog that we couldn't manage, so she'll come out and manage that for us. So we probably do 2/3 of the calls regarding animal control issues, but the animal control officer really manages the ones that we're not really qualified or equipped to manage. So a few years ago, we entered into this agreement where it's kind of a per hour rate for the animal control officer to come out, and then an additional 50 cents, I think, per mile for whatever she has to drive. So it's roughly $2,000 a year that we're paying right now pretty consistently, which I think is well worth every penny. There's an additional contract that we have with the animal orphanage, but her services are excellent. I've had nothing but positive feedback from the officers when they do have to call her out, and I think the community would say the same thing. So staff would recommend accepting the contract.
I just want to clarify that under Maine state law, we are required to either employ or contract with a certified animal control officer. So it's not an option for us to simply delegate all of that to Josh or the Orono Police Department, because, for example, with the dog, we recently had a dog that bit their owner. There were things that had to be done in that call that we were not trained or certified to do. So it's a good way for us to be able to pick up a highly trained individual and share that cost among many communities. The other piece, and the reason that Josh is standing here, is just to remind people that if they have lost a dog or have an animal control complaint, we want them to call the regular number that they would call to get police services. And let it go through dispatch, and let us decide who comes out, because that first response by the Orono Police Department sometimes will solve the issue, well, 66% of the time, but also allows for an immediate response so that the citizen knows that somebody is there and we're going to help, and even groundhogs, just saying.
As I recall, when we employed our own animal control officer or didn't have a regional, it was a much more expensive contract.
I believe so. I think for the rate we're paying for the regional is really low. Yeah. It's probably half. If I was to dive into my information bank, it would be probably half. Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Josh? All right. Thank you, Josh. We'll take a vote on Order 1913. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Order 1914, order proclaiming the month of March as Science Month in the town of Orono. I'll take a motion, please.
Second.
All right. Sophie, is this you?
There was a proposed proclamation in your packet. Essentially, what the proclamation says is that we declare math as Science Month in the town of Orono, and we March. And we encourage everybody to attend the Maine Science Festival in March. And this will be the second year that we have done this.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? No?
I support it. I think it's a great festival, and it highlights many of the people that are highlighted there are people who work at the university, so that's in our town. It brings people to the greater Bangor area, and as a scientist, I support that it It makes science fun.
Good.
The festival is March 13th through the 17th.
As a non-scientist, I also support this.
But you support fun, right? All right. I will take a vote on Order 1914. All those in favor? Passes unanimously. Order 1915, order authorizing the town manager to contract with Penobscot Cleaning Services, Inc. of Brewer, Maine for the cleaning of the air handling systems in the public safety and municipal buildings at an amount not to exceed $11,000, with funds drawn equally from the FY19 approved municipal public safety facility budget and the contingency account. We'll take a motion, please.
Move approval.
Second.
Bell.
Good evening, Bell Ryder, Assistant Town Manager. In mid-December, Sophie received this email with a picture attached to it that we're passing out right now. And this is one of the vents that was in the fire department. And the email said, the guys have been complaining recently about, stuffy noses, headaches, feeling like they're just overcome with dusty allergen type things when they spend 24 hours in the facility. So they took it upon themselves to take down one of the air handling vents, and what you see is the back side of it. Our understanding is that this system hasn't been cleaned since the building was built in 1996. Even though we regularly put in filters, just everything builds up. So we went out, we identified a company that we knew did kind of industrial duct cleaning in the Bangor area. That was Penobscot Cleaning. They came in the week between Christmas and New Year's and evaluated the buildings. They looked at both the public safety building and the town municipal offices, assuming that our offices probably look the same since they have also not been cleaned. And we also have people who spend all summer long when the air handling system works taking allergy meds. So they came back with a quote somewhere around $8,500 to $9,200 for cleaning. Now this is typically outside our purchasing authority, and so to do with a single quote. So we went out, we found another company that said that they cleaned ducts, and we asked them for a quote. That quote came in a little bit under $4,000, which made me think, wow, either somebody's really trying to buy business or there's a big difference in the service that's being provided. So I asked a few more questions. Turns out that what Penobscot Cleaning uses is two different truck-mounted systems. It all depends on what size the ducts are as to which system that they'll be using. They use compressed air to loosen the debris on the inside of the ducts, and then they use a very high-powered vacuum to suck it back out. And the workings of that vacuum are in the van that's parked out in the parking lot. So none of the particles are coming back into our facility at all. We're sucking them back out. They're going to the van. The less expensive quote is actually using a portable HEPA filtered vacuum. So it's a highly filtered vacuum. However, it's still possible that the particles will get back out into the system because this is a portable system. They come to each room. They reach in as far as they can with a brush. They have a vacuum system while they're kind of stirring it around, and then they suck it back out. After evaluating those two options, the second option is a perfectly acceptable cleaning system for homes, but not really built for long commercial building runs. So I spoke with Sophie and recommended to her that we go with the truck-mounted system. we have done some research and we found that the nearest other company that does it with this type of a system is down in Portland. So we are recommending a sole source contract with Penobscot Cleaning. We have some contingency put into place because it's going to be an hourly contract, and we don't know what's going to be found since we've never done this before.
So, well, great. I would ask you to speak to two more things, though. The first is the visual inspection beyond just the gate, just the vent, and discussions that were had around to do a lot of air quality testing or not, number one. And number two, some of the exacerbation in the public safety building.
I'm not 100% sure what you mean about the visual piece, so we'll leave that to last. But we did ask about doing air quality tests, and would that lead us to conclusively determine that we have solved our problems? And one, the air quality tests, because you'd be doing them before and after, and in our buildings in multiple areas, the estimate we got on that was about $2,000 to do the air quality tests. And because really what we're complaining about is the amount of dust and particles kind of floating around, that's not necessarily, we're not looking for any black mold, or we're not assuming that there's anything bad in there other than built up dust. So the recommendation is don't do the testing, because what you're trying to get out is something that's very visibly clear that you can get out. Like, you'll know when the dust is gone. Then the second piece is, particularly in the second and third floors of the public safety building, even though we have a very good exhaust system for our fire trucks, when they are pulled out and when they're in the building, they all are always hooked up to the exhaust system so that it is ventilated straight outside. However, over the years, every time they back into the building, that exhaust is not captured by the system, and of course, until they get out and they put the hose on the exhaust system. So that tends to build up significantly more just gunk in the air and the system. So they are recommending that we at least evaluate the vents and the ducts every 2 to 3 years over in the second and third floor. And after they do the cleaning, they will have a better idea of how much it would cost us to do that on a regular basis. Did I cover it? Okay.
So the 2 to 3 years, the regular basis of cleaning or replacing?
Of cleaning, just so we will continue replacing the air filters on a very regular basis. That's a monthly basis at the moment. After we do the cleaning, we might evaluate whether that has to be done a little bit more frequently, and then to look to see if we need to clean out the full ducts on a more regular basis. But that's something that we would evaluate in 2 or 3 years to see whether we're building it up or not.
Belle, do you know approximately how much ductwork you're talking about, foot-wise? Like, how did they get that estimate? How did they come to that estimate? What were they?
So they went through both buildings, and with their expertise of knowing, I don't know how many feet. They don't do a per foot estimate. They say, building this size is going to take us X number of days, and we're basing this on our professional experience. It's not a per foot price, it's a per hour cost.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? So do we have a contract not to exceed a certain amount? No.
At the moment, we don't have anything. We have, if this order is issued, we would only have authority to spend up to $11,000, and we would make sure that when we engage their services, that we would tell them when they hit 9,200, they got to stop, so that we at least know when we are starting to exceed their estimate.
Okay, great. No one else has any questions? Then I will ask for a vote on Order 1915. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Moving on to Order 1916, order directing the town manager to solicit proposals for an installation of municipal solar photovoltaic system for Orono from 3 solar installers, with each proposal to include a cost-benefit analysis and the installer's suggestion for the optimum system for the town. Further directing the town manager to compile and provide the solar installers data required to prepare the proposals, and further directing the town manager to report the results of the solicitation to the Finance and Operations Committee of the Council at its February 5th, 2019 meeting. I'll take a motion, please.
Motion.
And I'll take a second.
Second.
All right. Lori, I think you're up.
I want to thank the town manager for providing data already for 2 of the installers. I originally brought this up and suggested one installer, that installer being InSource Renewables, who has the agreement with the city of Bangor to do Greater Bangor Solarize. So I was most familiar with his work because that's Vaughn Woodruff and his team, did many solar installations here in Orono over the last year as part of Greater Bangor Solarize. When I heard that there was going to be a municipal solar bill this year that would put a bond in, if approved, that could cover half the cost of solar panels on municipal buildings or on municipal lands, I contacted Seth Berry, who's a state legislator runs the Energy Committee, and he suggested that municipalities should probably get estimates at the beginning from 3 solar installers, and gave me the suggestion that it would be Vaughn Woodruff of InSource Renewables and Sundog Solar and Revision Energy, because those are the 3 municipal installers, 3 solar installers that have done municipal installations for other towns in the state of Maine. This is an idea that is happening throughout the state. The goal would be, in addition to lowering carbon footprints and helping Maine transition to a more renewable energy, the specific for the town benefit would be that the goal would be that there'd be lower electricity costs for our town, and that would be a net benefit to every taxpayer. So this is just a request to get the data, which again, the town has given the electricity data to 2 of those installers. So there's 1 still left, and that they would then provide us for free, because that's part of their business model, what their suggestions are. So I'm not an expert in solar. It's not part of what I do, although I do, because I work with homeowners, I often hear about their solar projects and meet their solar installers. So I don't know what would be the best for our town. I just know that I've lived here for a long time, and I always look at the south-facing roofs and think that would be a great place for solar. So what the costs and benefits are, we wouldn't know until we get these estimates. So this order was just a request for getting estimates.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Yeah, just a brief question. I noticed we set I think a date, February 5th. Is that something that's doable for the staff among all the other things they're doing right now?
We meet council dates. We try very hard to do that. It would require some juggling, but and I don't know whether or not we'll have information back by that date.
Okay.
Question. I mean, solar energy is great and important, but just knowing the workload, being a little bit aware of the workload and the schedule that we set up and that sort of thing. Is I was unsure if there was a deadline that we are at risk of missing if we don't act on this immediately, because this seemed to come swinging in pretty hard and fast here, without really, even though I think in the workload, as we set that up, I mean, I think this was something that we were considering down the road, at some point, but I just didn't know if there was something that we're at risk of missing here, some urgency to this.
The solar installers, from what I can see from their Facebook pages, are encouraging people to contact them, because they are probably not as busy at this time of year, because they're writing things like, we can still install solar even when there's snow on the ground. So I think that this is a time that they are more likely to have time to do the estimate in a short period of time. And if you give independent business people, or actually anyone, a deadline, usually that helps with the turnaround. They may not be able to meet the deadline, but providing them a short turnaround. Also, from my understanding from other counselors and select people around the state, that once they do an estimate, they actually come and present the estimate. So the time investment is for the management to put it on, to provide electrical data, which they've already done for 2 of the installers. And it's the same data. And I'm putting it on agenda and perhaps organizing with those installers whether they can make it on that day. As far as the other timeline, if indeed this bill passes, and of course the legislative session is just beginning, but if the bill passes, there'll be a finite amount of money that will pay up to 50% for municipalities to support installation of solar panels, but the municipality would have to have an estimate. And this is not to say that any of these 3 would be exactly what we would do. This is a chance for us to be educated in the process. And also, we are about to embark on discussing the budget for a future year. And so without having knowledge of what potential costs there are for a future year, that would put discussing solar off again until after this budget process. So I'm new at being a town councilor, but I do recall that last year at this time, all the way up until March, the discussion was, we really have to think about the budget for the coming year. And so I'm doing that. I'm thinking about the budget for the coming year and trying to get as much information in advance.
No, I understand. I didn't know if there was a date that we were missing a grant opportunity, and it sounds like more like the convenience of the solar providers. Okay, that clarifies my question there.
So, Lori, what would you see as the timeline for this? If we were to get the installers in to do a presentation, when do you see these things happening?
I put the 5th because I assumed that the place to discuss this, since it's really the big concerns. When I've gotten emails from people, the concern is, oh, we have this big budget item for the schools, for the buildings, and maybe we can't afford anything. And my response is, we don't even know anything about the cost or benefit of this. There's hypotheticals, and there's other towns that have done it. And so I wouldn't propose to do anything that would be a net detriment to our town or cost us a lot of money. The goal here would be to reduce our costs and also reduce our carbon footprint, and to do it wisely. So I put the 5th because I do know that the solar installers have time now. It doesn't take them actually that long to make up the proposal. It might be more difficult to get them to come.
But you're saying you're seeing it happening this coming year.
I don't know when it would happen. I'm trying to gather information. We wouldn't make any decisions until we know whether it's the right thing for our town. I mean, so many of the towns that have done it have put on closed landfills. To my knowledge, we don't have a closed landfill, but I'm new here. We do? Okay, we have a closed landfill. Great, now I know. So and again, I have been driving north on Main Street thinking, oh, there's south-facing roofs on our buildings, but the towns that I've talked to when I've investigated have said, oh yeah, we also thought we have south-facing roofs, that's the best place to put it, but then found some of them were historic buildings. The Historic Society didn't like it. I know for a fact that it costs less to put them on the ground than it does to put them on the building. Sure. For the labor costs and the risk. So but that's all general. So I'm just looking for more specifics so that we can investigate whether it might be the right thing for our town. As far as the timeline, I don't know.
I think I think it's a great point. I think we do need to have more information. So if we are pursuing this item, we're doing it informed with understanding. I don't know if this timeline is going to work with, for February 5th. I mean, it seems like there is already so much happening right now. I just don't know if that can happen that quickly, and I don't know how the rest of council feels. And I want to clarify this because I know this is a really hot topic. That was a pun. Sorry. Sorry. But I know it's really passionate, and this is very important. And I know, especially everything we're looking at with climate change, I know small municipalities can make a difference. I think there's no one on this council that dismisses the need and the importance of this. And any questions or concerns I have about procedure on this or additional workload right now, I don't see the urgency other than, yes, climate change is happening. It's a really serious deal. We need to make a difference at some point. But I also agree with everything you said, Lori, as far as doing it fiscally responsible without further impacting the expense and the tax base we have now. Those are just some of my concerns when this comes up, and I think it echoes fairly accurately a lot of what I've heard coming from the community as well. And with that, I will let other council speak.
I'd like to back up a little bit, going on what Sam was saying about hearing from the community, because people who've approached me in the community and also some of the emails we've received, it seems as though there's a lot of confusion about what it is exactly we're doing right now in this particular moment in this order. And I think, with all due respect, Lori, there's some confusion on your end as well as to what exactly it is you're asking town staff to do. And I have, so in order to kind of bring everyone onto the same page, I want to just speak briefly about first, the process that council normally follows, and then second, why this specific order may not be ripe for passage tonight, in my view. So town meetings like the one we're at tonight are more formal. And when we're here, we vote on three basic things: ordinances, orders, and resolves. So this is where, after a process that usually takes a long time and a lot of meetings and a lot of information gathering, we vote to take action on something that we've been working on, supported by town staff, and we're armed with the best detailed information possible. But in the beginning, when there's an idea that's first discussed, it comes usually to a committee or a workshop. The purpose there is to have a less formal, more wide-ranging discussion, and then get a sense of how the majority of council feels about where to prioritize that issue. Sometimes we have to make hard choices about how to prioritize things based on a very limited amount of resources and time that we have at our disposal. It also allows us to examine it from as many angles as possible, which is really important to make an informed decision, and also to talk about what the intended purpose and the unintended potential consequences could be of adopting or taking action on something. So if it has legs, it enters our work plan, and the staff will then devote time on it based on its how it measures up to existing priorities. So the basic process at that stage is that staff then presents to council in committee or workshop. It takes the council's input, then staff goes off and gathers more information and focuses their proposals and brings it back to us. And it's this kind of back and forth that goes on for sometimes many meetings, maybe even sometimes months or even a year or more, depending on the complexity of the issue. So when the issue is thoroughly researched and discussed, then the public is also along the way given opportunities to engage. At that point, the council as a group will then direct staff that we're ready to take action on an item. And then it comes to a meeting like this one where you see us vote on it. So there's a lot that goes into these votes that we take here, even though it seems like a very quick affair. So the reason for this slow and steady pace is not to obstruct or to stop issues from evolving. It's so that we can do our due diligence and make sure that we're really thinking about every dime of taxpayer money spent and every single issue that's going to impact the quality of life of our residents. This isn't what you see in the movies. And the movies are on TV. People will make a big impassioned speech and the crowd swells and then action happens. But that it's not as glamorous as that in, in real life, in politics, maybe in politics, but not in governance. So it was designed that way on purpose, so that we could make really reasoned decisions instead of sort of impassioned ones or quick ones. So that brings me kind of to my main point, which is why I don't believe that this particular order in front of us should pass. I don't think that it's ripe for that. First, because I think that it attempts to shortcut or short circuit the process that's already underway on this issue. And second, because, bless you. And second, because there's really a near complete lack of council discussion that kind of renders it out of step with our normal, carefully considered approach. For folks who kind of don't know, we started talking about this at the end of October, solar panels in specific. The group determined that we weren't able at that time to make it as high a priority as many of us would like in terms of how we devote staff time to it due to budget constraints and all of the other concerns we had going on at the time. But that as time allowed, staff were going to provide us and Councilor Osher in particular with the historical data on the town's energy consumption as she had volunteered to analyze it. This is something councilors do a lot. We volunteer to use our time and our expertise to offset staff costs because staff are paid by tax dollars. So it's a way that we can contribute. And so, to our knowledge, Councilor Osher was going to take that information and work on it and bring it back to us and talk to us more about whether it was something we could pursue. We had another workshop in December where our town manager let us know that some of that data was about ready to be passed on in the process. And apparently at that point, some solar companies had already contacted the town looking for information and wanting to do a free analysis that you've already heard about, a couple of them. As a group at that time, we determined that Sophie should give the data to these companies with the understanding that we were just looking for information and not, guaranteeing a contract down the road. And so she gave that information to them at the beginning of January. And since that time, we haven't heard back anything new from those companies or from Councilor Osher about analyzing the data. So we still are in that same information gathering space that we were in October and December. So we don't have any real new information to make further decisions, but the process is ongoing at this point. So I don't want people to be disappointed I have already stated my intention not to vote for this order because it isn't to speak against solar power, and it's not, well, in any case, it's the petition maybe some folks have seen circulating says, please sign to ask the town council to pass this initiative, but that isn't really what we do. And up until a couple of days ago, there wasn't even an actionable item that we could vote on. And quite frankly, I don't think this item is actionable at this point. It directs staff to skip over steps we normally take in evaluating a large capital project. There's a formal process when a government entity requests information from vendors. And the order we have in front of us tonight suggests a lack of understanding of that process. And so I don't believe that we're ready for this phase yet. And I think we still are awaiting further information, and that process is ongoing. If it wasn't Councilor Osher's intention to skip the line in that process, well, then the order is sort of redundant to me because we're already doing the things that the order is asking. So I don't believe that the timeline is appropriate for staff at this point. This is ongoing already, and I don't feel that there's any need to pass this particular order to compel the town staff to do this work. So I intend to vote no on this, and I urge other councilors to speak to that if they feel moved. Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything to say? Okay.
And, I just like to add to that, we have a lot of different ways of approaching these things. I don't know what the school's going to do, but we've all heard about their 14 million, I think, which would be a huge crash. And we don't control their budget. They give us a bill and we have to pass it on as part of the taxes. it's out of our control. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear. We can look at ways of funding this. These things are usually long-term in terms of their lifetime and their use, 20 years or more. And so it's something certainly to look at in terms of the money and how we may or may not be able to fund it or to bond it or do something like that if we ever get to that point. But as everybody else has made that point that, or several people have, we are very cautious with spending the town's money. And that comes from a lot of directions, including when you think about it, we're all getting grayer. And that means more and more people are on a fixed income. And so that's one of the reasons, at least for myself, that I like to pay attention to those things.
Anyone else? Lori? No? Tom? Somebody?
Excuse me. I agree with Councilor Gardner's comments. And again, this isn't to say that we aren't willing to look at solar, but I think the steps are already in place, and I really think the order is redundant.
Lori?
Yes, I had an eager volunteer write the petition, and the petition ended up with people signing saying they wanted solar. And so, yeah. So
Do you have the text of the petition?
I don't have the text with me.
So we just have the list of the names.
So this is a list of people who've signed saying that they wanted the town to have solar. So there's 2 pages. So these are there's 2 pages. So there's one. The top one starts with Constant Albertson, and the second one is Amanda Leverdier. So. Okay, you pass those down. So these are people who signed that they are in support of Orono investigating, or actually they said they wanted solar. So as I say, it's unfortunate because I want us to investigate solar. And I started saying that when I was elected in November of 2017. And I very much appreciate all of the work that previous town councilors have done to organize this, because this is amazing. I have colleagues who are in other towns, and the town meetings go on for 5 hours and people argue and they're rude to each other. That is not the case here. People are polite. Our meetings are short. They're incredibly well organized. Our staff is fabulous at supporting the issues that are on the agenda. It's a great town council. It's a great town. And I have not been able to really figure out how to proceed with my agenda items, specifically because one of the ways the town has gotten this so organized so that meetings are short and they're polite and they're, as Councilor Gardner said, there's this whole process, is that part of that process is if it's not on the work plan and we didn't plan to think about it, we're not thinking about it. And so I've been talking about solar for a year, more than a year, and I'm very pleased that by October, it was actually written into an agenda and there was agreement that the town manager would be providing electrical data. But this is not that new. I've been on the town council for now 15 months, and this has been a priority that we would look into solar. And I knew all those 15 months that it's free to get the reviews. And so part of the reason I'm in a rush is because the best time to get the review, to get the estimates from the solar installers is when they're not busy. The other best time to get information is before there's going to be state money available, that we would want to make a decision to try to get that state money. So, and the other thing I want to thank is that some of the town councilors have met with me individually to help mentor me on how to do this process. And I really want to thank you, Councilor Gardner, because when we met, one of the things you said is that the town manager is so busy and all of the staff is so busy. They have so much to do. And it's very hard to put things onto their lap when they have so much else to do, especially when they're not experts in something. And I agree that is hard. And that is because of that conversation is why I push now to get the town manager to provide the information to the installers so that they can bring for free, without our town manager or our town staff's time, some things that will educate us on how and if this town should be moving forward with solar. So that's why that's why I put it on the agenda, because in fact, it's been unclear how I would get something on the agenda if it hadn't been ruminated over for many years and put onto a work plan that was going to be addressed at some future time. So I'm putting on the agenda, right? But at this point, the pieces that are left, since two of the solar installers already have the data, the pieces that are left from this order is that the third solar installer would get the data, and that each of them would tell us if they could present us at a future meeting. It doesn't have to be February 5th. I put February 5th because I knew that was the next finance committee meeting, and this seemed to have to do with money because we have 3 committees, and it seemed like money's the big issue. It's the fear of spending money is one issue, and I think the benefit of lowering our electricity costs. Both of those end up being, the fear and the benefits are both a financial thing. So whether it's the 5th or whether it's in March, I'm sure that the people who install this can get us estimates. They've gotten my clients, and again, I take no money from them. I just say, I have a client who wants solar, and then the solar installer sends them an estimate, and I get a copy. And I've seen them turn it around on a home in a week. So I assume because there's so many buildings and there's much complication, it will take them longer. I put February 5th because I needed to put a date. I was told to make an order, and I actually responded. I don't even know what the order is supposed to look like. So I went and reviewed myself previous orders and came up with wording that looked like something that would match, because I didn't get a lot of mentoring on it. In part, I don't get a mentoring on how to write an order because it's not on the work plan in the same way that things that have been ruminated by a council that's been working for years together has things on the work plan. So anyway, there's my pitch. I really would love us to make a resolve to move forward so that I know it won't get caught in the whirlwind of other things that have already been decided to be done.
I'd just like to respond to that to correct the record, because this is not the first time, Lori, that you've brought up nothing I want gets on an agenda. I don't know how to do this. I say things and it doesn't happen. That it's demonstrably misleading and well, it's incorrect. I mean, all of this is on the record. We can look back at the record and see what has and has not been discussed in every single meeting you've ever attended. And you keep characterizing the work plan as though there's this long-standing written in stone thing that we're inheriting from other counselors. It's not. It's amended every year. You yourself had the opportunity to add to it within your tenure. It is a living, breathing document that is a guideline for us in the work that we do, but it is not designed to exclude any counselor from bringing something to a meeting. And as you have made this claim many times, and recently in an email exchange with Council Chair that we were party to, I looked back at the record and found that somewhere between half a dozen and a dozen times, whether you want to double count based on if it's the same issue or not, just in the past 15 months, things that you brought that were not part of the work plan were put on the agenda, and that we discussed them and that they started in on the process. Perhaps things didn't happen as rapidly as you would have liked, or perhaps you didn't have the support of council for it to move on. But the fact that you keep characterizing it as the work plan is blocking you from having anything on an agenda, that's just demonstrably false. It has happened many times, probably more than any other counselor. You have items placed on agendas. And this is something we've talked about, over coffee as well. And I stand by that. And it's all you need to do is to look back at the record to see it. So I bristle when the characterization seems to be that we're obstructing you in some way, or that the work plan or the process is obstructing you. And I just don't believe that that's true. And I don't want the public to think that that's how this council operates, because it is not. And in specific to the issue of solar, I did look back at the record for any reference to solar panels or solar discussion versus any reference to energy efficiency. Up until October, when you brought things that had to do with this general subject to council, it was always under the purview of energy efficiency. You did not bring up, the way that you just characterized it was as though 15 months ago when you were elected, you said, I want solar panels. And we all said, we don't want to talk about it And that isn't what happened. You've talked about energy efficiency, and everyone on this council is interested in that as well. But you didn't bring up solar panels in specific until recently. So please don't characterize this as something that has gone on for 15 months and we're ignoring you, because that just isn't true. And it's on the record, so we can check it.
Solar panels are part of energy efficiency. And to do an energy efficiency evaluation of a building, I need the data of the electrical and other kinds of energy use. And I did request that, and I had to never received that. And I've been going to trainings outside of the mentoring I'm getting here to try to figure out how to be more effective. And I was mentored to choose one thing, and the thing that has the most impact for the least expenditure of funds. And solar is the one thing of energy efficiency that has the most benefit, possibly, if we got the research, for the least impact of funds. If I had gotten the electrical data and the fuel data long time ago, I would have asked permission to share it with the solar installers, and that would have been one of the things that could have been brought to the town council. But no data was provided until January 8th, and I'm really glad that it was. And so we can move forward with that. And yeah, I'm very happy to provide evaluations of the buildings for free of how they could become more energy efficient outside of the solar. But the solar would have been part of what I would have provided if I had received data.
I'd like to just add a couple of things. One, it sounds like the two companies do have the information. So if they want to come forward, they can, contact us, and we can talk to them. And if we need a third one, we can look at that. But second thing is, I really would like to see what the legislature is going to do with this bill. I don't want to get too far out in front of something. And then I understand what you're saying about estimates, so we have it in place. But my concern is, if they're going to bond, they may not do it this session. They may wait till next session. And I don't want to be in a position where we've paid for something and then hoping to seek reimbursement. I would much rather see what the state does and then base our decision on that. And third, just for the public's information, we are looking at energy efficiency in changing out the street lights to all LED lights, which would save, I think, $37,000 a year after the initial payback, which is, I think, 6 years, 7 years. So the town is embarking on some energy efficiency. Public Works Garage, when it was built, it does have a geothermal component to it. We looked at solar at that time for that building, and it was not cost effective for that building. I understand that costs may have come down since then. So if there's no further discussion on this order, I will take a vote on order 1916.
One more thing. I do want to thank Councilor Osher for bringing this up and for being so passionate about it and taking this so seriously. I think you're to be commended for that. And I don't want to leave the impression that we don't appreciate your passion.
There's two ways that solar projects are funded. One would be something called a power purchase agreement, where the installer installs at no cost to the town, and they are entitled to collect federal incentives that are not available to municipalities. They're only available to businesses or homeowners. And so most of the towns that I've spoken to have gone with a power purchase agreement. And so that way there's no upfront cost, and the electrical cost to the town is less, but not nothing, because there are some agreements that in that, but it's known what the electrical cost would be because there's an agreement. And so if electrical costs fluctuate, the cost to anyone who has a power purchase agreement is the same per kilowatt hour over the length of the contract. And that the town has the right to buy the system outright in the town of Woolwich, we're buying it in 7 years. And they, much like us buying the LEDs for the streetlights, they have to put money out every year, or say, in their case, they saved money, put money aside every year to buy it. So personally, I like the idea where we own our own solar panels outright, but that's only become viable as the cost of solar has gone down. And I don't know what's viable for our town. So there's actually the reason to get a few different estimates is different installers have just different business models. So anyway, my apologies for all the ways in which I don't understand the process. This is my thank you for this first time ever having something on an agenda that was voted on in this way, where there was a order resolve or whatever. This is my first time doing that. There have been times where things that I suggested or requested were discussed in meetings, and I very much appreciate that. So I don't have the correct vocabulary, but this is the very first time where something I said I thought we could do is placed in a way that we would get to have a vote on it. So I very much appreciate that this is coming to a vote. Thank you.
We just to add one thing too, is that we already have a power purchase agreement because we use so much power in the WPCF. So we would also have to look at the dynamics of whether, can we amend that one? Can we, because I don't know how many years we're into it, but it's already in place at this point in time.
For solar?
Not for solar, for electric.
That's for using what, for hydro?
No, it's for buying electricity because we use so much of it down at WPCF.
Mm-hmm.
We have a power purchase agreement to purchase an amount of so much.
My understanding is it has to do with the solar, that you have a new agreement, just like as to what we were discussing. You have a new TIF for a new location. I think that there's a new agreement for a new, but I don't know. I'm hoping to learn from the installers what would be of benefit to our town. That's my goal.
I think this conversation will definitely continue. I think this is an important issue.
Okay.
Take comments?
Sure. Yep. Go right. If you would just please tell us your name.
Okay. Hi, my name is Kathy Lyons. I live in Orono, and a lot of people come to council meetings when they're against something. So I was really excited to come to the council for something that I'm really for. And so one of the things about when I voted for Lori was that I knew that she was a mover and a shaker. Sometimes movers and shakers can be uncomfortable to be around. I also know that when I first moved here in the late 80s, I got involved in a committee to develop a recycling plan. And we spent hours on it. And we went through the whole thing. And then people came to the meeting and voted it down. And I've never been on a committee for the town since because it was just so hard. So I understand how things need to be done slowly and get the town people educated so that you don't come up with a great plan and then have people say, no, I don't want it, because that can be really devastating. So Orono now has a recycling thing going on, but I don't know how many years. That's like many years after I got involved in that. I also know how slow things can be because I was working with the Board of Education and or the board trying to get more art in the middle school. And of course we did, but it was after my daughter was 2 grades ahead of that. So I think that it's really, really important to to think big and take baby steps. And I don't think those things are exclusive of each other. And I'm really excited to have the town actually get estimates, because then you have the information. We have solar on our house. What do we pay?
$7 a month.
$7 a month. And so that's been like incredible. So if you give that kind of information to townspeople, it's hard to argue with. And it gives jobs to local people. So I just want you to stay positive. And I think all of you like the idea of saving energy and stuff.
And the planet.
And the planet. And the planet can't wait. So thank you, Lori, and thank you everyone for, you were very well spoken. Thanks.
Thank you. Sir?
So I've lived here since 1987, the second time I've come to a town council meeting. So my name is Ken Fox. I'm a little bit concerned from what I saw here. So one, I think you guys work great together. But the one concern I have is it's almost like there's a gap in the method or process of performing what you do as a town council. One is providing a petition. That didn't appear as though it was part of the normal process. So that was a little bit disturbing to me. But I'm a business person, so I look at return on investment. So when I hear $7 a month, my next question is, how much did it cost you to install it? Right. You know where I was going to go with that already. So what's that? Yeah. Okay. So at the end of the day, in my civilian job, we look at capital projects, the amount of money we invest, what we get for a payback. So my concern here tonight was the fact that my taxes are going to increase, which they continue to increase, by the way. You all know that. You hear us all the time. So what I look for is the future value of my house. Hopefully my property value goes up. I want to see appreciation and value, at least consistent value in my property. I think the fact of the matter is, my perspective here is that if you invest in the school, the value of my house will go up. And I hope, and we've had this discussion, that we bring in more young families to our community, because we need a working family with school children that are able to pay their taxes and support the school system and having a good school, that we produce a future generation. So my concern with solar panels is this, that we invest, if in fact it's net neutral, if you will, to use that term, that we get 0 for 0. In other words, we can invest the money with a short-term payback and it pays for itself quickly. Now, here's the caveat: without government subsidies. Because the fact of the matter is, if you get the state money, every single person in this room is paying money to the state for that bond. We pay interest on the bond, and it costs us more money to support the solar panels. So if in fact it costs me, I don't know how much it costs you for your solar panels for your house, $10,000 for the solar panels for the house or less, and the payback is 4 years, and it doesn't cost me anything for power for the next 20 years, it's a great investment. But I'd suspect if you run the numbers and actually look at the true cost without government subsidies, that it will not be that quick of a payback. So I would ask that your proposals include true cost, not government subsidy cost. In other words, bonds from the state of Maine or bonds from the federal government, what the true cost of those solar panels are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Some of you know me, Sally. Oh wow, that was not my maiden name, my first husband's name. Wow, that was a big slip. Okay, my name is Sally Brooker, and I don't need a teleprompter, but I do need notes. I haven't been in this chamber. I haven't been in this council chamber since I had fourth grade students here making a field trip with a mock town council meeting. And I have to say that times have changed, and I share Ken Fox's concern, and that is, I think that I'm going to go out on a limb, and Lori, I think that you aren't as naive as you want to present yourself. And I think that there is some pretty slick political maneuvering and manipulation. And I think that having that petition that my understanding is that you had Maine People's Alliance come around and solicit signatures. And in some cases, that's not true. That's what I was told. In any case, it doesn't matter who the organization was that you had do it. It seemed calculated, and it seemed like it was manipulative, and it seems to me like it was an effort to give the council members these names on the petition, to put pressure on them to see things your way. That's my first concern. Oh, along with the press conference. That was to boot. But I have the same concern fast forward to March, when we don't know how people are going to vote on the 14 million, which was originally about 28 million, but it's still 28 million, whether it's 14 million this year and 14 million next year, that still adds up to $28 million that we have to come up with. And there are a lot of people, a lot of seniors who are on fixed incomes, as Councilor Gardner mentioned, and they simply just can't afford to have taxes continue to increase. And I don't believe that solar panels should be anywhere near a priority. I believe that the school improvements should be our priority. And in addition to seniors, we have a lot of young people that are living here who rent, a lot of families who rent homes. And when the landlords realize an increase in their property taxes, then guess who's going to pick up the tab for them? It would be the people renting from the landlords. And what will they be doing? They'll be moving out of town. So I've done a little bit of research. I'm not a solar panel expert, but I have done some research. And what I've found is that there are some positive things about solar panels. Sure, there's no denying that. But it isn't install it and forget it. It's weather dependent. The storage is expensive at least for commercial buildings. It requires maintenance. Otherwise, the efficiency, which is not much to begin with, well, in most cases, it's, I think at best, 20 to 40% efficient. And that efficiency decreases 1% every year from what my research has shown me. So in terms of maintenance, what I'm referring to is that if there's dust, film gets on the solar panels, it reduces efficiency. So those things, the panels need to be cleaned and maintained. So what I think is that the council, I mean, what I'm seeing tonight is that the council is being fiscally responsible, and I appreciate that. And I'd like to see you continue to be fiscally responsible and not pressured. Thanks.
If I could make one statement. The 14 million is in the school, and they are not a department of the town anymore, which is difficult for people to understand because they were up until about 10 years ago. So that money, which is better than half of your tax bill, please make sure that gets to that school board and to those meetings, because it does no good to tell us. We understand that, and we get criticized for something we have no control over.
I understand that.
So, and I don't know how they're going to do that, if they're going to bond it or if they're going to do it over time, whatever they need to do. They have some problems. There's no doubt about that. But just to make clear that we are no longer part of that. We were at one time, and we did have control over what happened there. But we will look at how to do this, and like Lori said, the first thing is to get some numbers to bang around, and let's see where we're going with it. And we need to look at it in the long term. It can be, there's any number of ways it can be done, including the town could do some bonding if we needed to. But there's a whole lot of variabilities. And while I'm on my high horse here, one of the reasons that our taxes have gone up, and I pay those taxes too, is that the revenue sharing under the former governor was cut drastically. This town lost several $1 million in revenue sharing, which is in lieu of us having a tax on items, on sales. They said they'd share it, and they shut that down. So I'm hoping that they'll move that burden back where it was, because a lot of the tax cuts ended up being on our shoulders, and it's to all the people that own a home. And so it's always complex. That's what I can tell you.
And as you mentioned, bonds, I'll second Ken's, his idea in terms of bonds. He's absolutely right. Bonds are not free money. Bonds come from taxpayers too. So,
Right. No, absolutely. We have to pay a percentage. It's just like us buying your house or your car or anything else. And we certainly do understand that. But sometimes it makes more sense, especially at the previous time when we were paying 2 and 3% for the bonds, to go ahead and get something done now.
if it's necessary,
If it's, yeah, we have to look long term.
right.
Make sure I understand this. So the town council gets a bill from the school board. That's it.
That's
Yes.
correct.
That's it.
And then we have to send that bill out along with ours.
Now, in fairness, the school board conducts a public hearing and they have a public vote.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, council will take a vote on order 1916 now. All those in favor? One in favor, all those opposed? 6 opposed. So the order did not pass. But I think, to be fair, that I think the installers will probably come back with some information and we'll move it forward.
Also, I think, yeah, and the staff, I'm sure, will continue with their efforts that they've been moving with.
Okay, moving on to council committee and representative reports. Sam, do you have anything on?
We had a snow day.
Okay. Tom?
We had a long finance committee meeting on January 8th. We heard from our police chief on several items. One was an initial discussion on the possibility of moving from the current CALIA accreditation to a new state law enforcement accreditation. We'll be hearing more about that possibility in the future. We talked about the contract renewal for the animal control officer, which you have taken action on tonight. We talked about the scope of work for capital infrastructure improvements on North Main Avenue, a project that has come in much more expensive than anticipated. And we talked about the possibility of phasing that over 2 years. And again, we'll be getting more information from our public works superintendent on that. We reviewed a cost analysis related to purchasing and converting existing streetlights to improved energy efficient lights, which would also improve the quality and use significantly less electricity. And we have instructed our staff to move forward in presenting more information on that. We talked with our public works director about the replacement schedule for our large trucks and have authorized him to seek bids for next year's purchase. It takes about 6 months once a bid is accepted to put these trucks together. They're made specifically to order. And in order to have that truck for the next plowing season, we need to start that process now. And this would be in next year's budget. And we, that's it.
Just that. All right. Megan?
The Orono Historical Society did not meet in January, as close as it was to New Year's. So I don't have a report there. But the Comp Plan Implementation Committee met on January 7th, and we had a very concise discussion about rental classifications, short-term versus long-term. So just to spare folks a whole bunch of detail, we're in an ongoing process of figuring out how to deal with Airbnb and all those kinds of rental apps and things, because the language that we currently have in our definitions doesn't quite, it was created before these apps really existed. So we're just trying to work with the town planner to figure out how to adapt and adjust and possibly think about the future of that market. So
Is there any other, did MMA legislative?
No, we haven't. The next meeting of the MMA Legislative Policy Committee is January 31st. So I'll report back to you on our February meeting.
All right. Moving on to future agenda items and items of concern. Cheryl, do you have anything? Megan?
Brief one. It is January and our election's in March. And so I presume that February will have a candidates night. Are we close to a date?
We have a date and we have a moderator.
Oh.
So Lori Sidelko has agreed to moderate. I think there was Nancy was checking with Emily Kane to see if she was going to be available.
Yeah.
Not heard back from her yet. So we're looking at February 7th at 7 p.m. We only have one school board candidate for one position. So it will likely be maybe 20 minutes or so for the first section, and then we'll take a brief break and move on. We have 4 candidates for 2 seats, and it's usually a really interesting evening. It is also historically one of our most viewed YouTube episodes. Oh, we're going to stream it live on Facebook. Yes, we're getting there. So what would be interesting is if people have questions that they want asked, they're welcome to submit them to the town, and we'll make sure that they get in the list. I was questioned because it's early for candidates night, but absentee ballots are going to be available on February 11th. And so we really wanted candidates night to happen before absentee ballots were available.
Tom, do you have anything? I'm good. All right. Tom? Lori? Sam? Sophie?
So I very rarely have an item of concern, but I do have one. And that is that Jason Bolton concluded his service on the Orono VZ Water District. He did a great job for us. However, he is not able to continue. We have a term for 5 years that is currently vacant, and we advertised. We did not have any interested individuals submit any letter of interest. So we are putting it back out there that we are desperately seeking an individual who's interested in the water district to come forward and be able to let council know and let us hopefully fill that seat. Advertisement either has gone out or will go out this week to try to open up another round. But if anybody knows anyone interested in the water district, please let me know.
Great. Thank you. Public petitions. I don't think we have any. Public comments.
Hi. First of all, I was pleased to see that you folks looked at the charter and that we have changed our requirement for the numbers of folks to signatures necessary to file a petition. That was only something that I worked on for like 5 or 6 years, Lori. And it happened after I left. I know. And the reason I'm here tonight, quite frankly, is because of the op-ed that I read in the paper regarding the solar initiative. And I didn't speak earlier because I'm not concerned about the solar initiative. I'm concerned about the procedure and that we have in place, and kind of the code of conduct that I guess is unwritten but kind of understood over the years with counselors. And I was just kind of curious when I read that op-ed, what struck me and why the reason I was concerned and why I came here to hear what was going on was because in the very first sentence, you identified yourself as town councilor. And I was kind of curious why you chose to do that. Did anybody ever advise you that that wasn't the right thing to do? You're entitled to your opinion as a citizen, but you don't speak for the councilor.
No one advised me, and I wasn't
But
speaking
why
for
did,
the
so why did you
council.
do it? Why did you feel that was important? Why didn't you lead in with your qualifications, your background, and give yourself some credibility? Why did you seem to choose that? You began and ended with
Yeah,
that.
I'm thinking maybe this should be a conversation you have with Lori on the side. I'm not sure that.
Well, it bothers me, Cindy, because one of the things I also mentioned and was never given much run and much credence was I thought that it was necessary. It would be not harmful to have a written code of conduct or code of ethics. When I brought it up once before, it didn't get any legs underneath it. And as a matter of fact, and I've lived my since that I brought that up, and the response that I got from a fellow counselor, I chose to believe that was a facetious comment. I believe it today to be facetious, but the response I got was, we don't want to be, bothered by or encumbered by such a thing. But I think that it's something that you folks need to consider. I know you've looked at your charter, and I really think that that's something that we need to look at. And I don't see it as an encumbering thing. I see it as a clarifying issue. I think it puts everybody on solid ground so we don't go through these types of things in the future. Because quite frankly, my response as a citizen when I read that was, what are they thinking? And they, meaning the council, because of everything that's going on. So that was very misleading for someone to read in the paper and to find out there really wasn't the kind of support necessarily behind that I was led to believe that there was by reading it. And those are the types of things I think are really important. That we don't come into this position and into these positions as counselors with personal agendas that go beyond the agenda of doing the best that we can for all of the citizens in the town and taking each issue as it comes up. We all had an opportunity when I was on the council, in any case, to present our ideas through work plans, and through consensus, we agreed on what those things would be done and what priorities that they had. And I think that's really important. I think that that's one of the reasons why the council, in my experience for the 9 years, believe me, there were a lot of times when I was the odd man out and there was some heated discussions, but there was never a lack of civility. There was never a sense that people were doing things behind the scenes or coming at it from behind or whatever. It was up front and we all knew where we stood. And I think that's really important, particularly if you want to continue to have a reputation for being that kind of a council, that it's what you see is what you get. And I think that's really important. And I'm not sure when I walked, when I walked in tonight, I missed the beginning of your conversation, but I think it probably was explaining why you were having this press conference. And one of the things what I did hear was when the question was asked, were there any oppositions or any problems that had been encountered with it? And I can't believe that you were able to say no. Because I mean, it's obvious that there are oppositions.
Any other comments?
I just want to know what procedure I can do as a citizen to get a petition about the solar or to talk about it in town that would be acceptable. What do I need to do?
There is a petition process. She needs to go to Shelley to get the petition.
Shelley in the town office?
So there is a formal petition process that you can require council to look at something.
Okay.
It requires that you come with 5 signatures from other individuals in your topic area. The town clerk creates petition form from that and you circulate it. I am not the policy person. I am
Okay.
simply the operations person.
Right. And I was thinking that what can I do
Yeah.
so that people have a voice without me ruffling feathers?
So I want to be very clear that there is a process
That's what I'm
that-
asking for.
that goes on. And when we develop the capital budget is a time for people to have a voice. When town council is working on their work plan, that is a time for people to have a voice. It's all done publicly in open session. It's on agendas for people to discuss. Emails to counselors, letting them know what's
I've done that
important to
about
you.
the dog thing, the dog leash thing on the river.
Yes,
I emailed about that.
yes. So,
So is that what I should do? Or should I email everybody?
So if you, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is to have conversations with counselors.
Yep.
To participate in processes that are already happening. With
Okay.
this particular issue, there is a process underway. However, most of the time when we think about capital projects, and if I use the lights as the example, the street lights.
Yep.
We've been working on that for 4 months. It went out to a study to make sure that we knew where all the streetlights were and what they were. And
Yeah, I know.
come
We're,
back with
I understand.
budget.
My husband's on a committee for condominiums, and they take a long time to go through.
So what I heard
So
here
I
tonight
understand that.
was that counselors pretty much universally agreed that this is something that is worthy of looking at within the work plan that we have right now and the time that we have right now.
Right. But
Most
that's
of
what
the
that,
time-
but that's what that said. It says, I mean, and unless I read the words wrong, the words were saying, should we look into this? And people voted against it. So I don't, it wasn't saying, should we spend money on this? It was, should we agree to look into this? And I'll look at the words again, but that's the way I interpreted them. So anyway, I'm not trying to be, oh, I don't know, the word's not coming. Anyway, I'm not trying to be disruptive. I just am excited about this opportunity. And we also have a, what's the thing we have in the above the garage? Yeah, we also have a heat pump, which is an amazing thing. So I came here not knowing about the history. I just learned about that. But I came here because I was excited. And so as someone who has not been as involved as I should in town matters, this is one that I'm interested in helping with. So that's
please,
all.
please stay involved.
Where's that voice coming from?
Please stay involved.
Yeah, I have.
There are some of these formal meetings that we hold once a month, and there's 2 people here.
I know that. I know.
And
I know.
unfortunately, it's a little too late to run for council because I think the petitions were due on Friday.
I am not a council person.
Oh, but
I cannot do numbers.
You'd be surprised.
I would suggest,
we need normal citizens.
I have a daughter at home that requires a huge amount of energy that I don't have.
we would suggest that you watch the agendas, and if
Yeah.
it's solar will probably come up at some
Right.
time,
Right.
and,
Yeah.
and you could participate that way.
You can sign up on the website for that.
Okay, I am not asking the town to spend a lot of money or raise my taxes. I'm just saying it's a great idea, and whether it happens, in 10 years or in 5 or in 3, I think it's the way the world is going. That's all.
And I'd say that you'd probably find a lot of support for that idea on council. The main
That's what
crux
I
of
heard that.
what we were getting into tonight is that this process is already underway. We're already looking into it. It may not be happening as rapidly as some people would like, but that's because we have to decide how to allocate staff time and resources because your taxes pay for staff salaries. So we have to balance a lot of things to get work done. And so I want
don't
to make
mind
sure
paying taxes.
everyone
I also
understands.
don't mind getting money from the state or the government.
Right.
So, it's a philosophical thing when it comes
So
to
my
that.
main, kind of objection tonight, really, and I hope I made that point clear, is not with the issue itself, but We've spent a lot of time tonight and preparing up to this meeting for something that wasn't really necessary in my view to happen. And so I'm really thinking about how can we move forward with things without getting into a big traffic jam.
Yeah.
And I don't want anyone to walk away from this meeting thinking the council isn't interested in this idea
Yeah.
or is stifling people.
Right.
We don't do that, and we're not stifling anyone.
Right.
We are looking into it. We're just being very cautious about how we use staff time and how we allocate funds.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. And there's just a lot of movement for women to be active in our world. That's right. And I think there's also a movement to get other people who aren't in government, want to be in where you are involved.
Mhm.
And I want to be for something. I don't want to be standing here saying, don't do this.
Great.
So that's all.
Appreciate it. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. Susan?
My comment isn't quite as involved. I simply wanted to compliment all of my neighbors of Orono who installed decorative lighting for this season in terms of it made for a very beautiful landscape. And unfortunately, I'm not going to put my money where my mouth is and put $5 bills in all the mailboxes. So please don't egg my house in response to that.
Thank you, Susan.
I promised my wife I wouldn't say anything tonight. Sorry. This has been a pretty good meeting. We probably got to get more controversy things on the agenda, and you'll have more people showing up instead of two. So, but my question that, before I said I was going to say anything, regarding the air cleaner, why wouldn't that go out for a bid instead of being assigned to someone in Brewer, where there was another person in Portland or company? But I always thought these things went out for bid.
Stuart, oftentimes they do. In this particular case, we have an issue that needs to be addressed. And so we looked in the region. And our experience also tells us if we bring somebody up from Portland, we're paying a lot more on the mobilization cost. And once we're pulling from that market, we tend to see much higher quotes as opposed to lower quotes.
Okay, I was just wondering why it wouldn't go out for a low bidder or whatever. The other thing I was wondering about, which I didn't hear, if there's been any asking other companies or municipalities, wherever had the cleaning, if they had whatever I want to call it, a resume or how they did their, if they hired a Portland company or a Brewer company or a Madawaska company, do they ask, can you give us some names of your
References.
clients and got recommendations? So it's just my trying to figure out what to do in case I run for council. Don't worry. So
We have reviewed references from Penobscot Cleaning Services, and we know industrial. We know that they do very good work, and we also know that they tend to have the lion's share of that work in this region because
the only thing I didn't hear was that there was request for, that's all. Oh, the last thing, maybe the next meeting and the one after, I'll come out with my top property tax communities. We got 42 listed, and I'm sure without me telling you where Orono stands among the 42 communities. That's coming.
Thank you, Stuart. We'll be waiting. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Nancy, do you have some signatures for us? Papers? Oh, whatever works for you.
We have